Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 153 of Let's Go Racing Talk with Jones Dominic here with you. A shorter show this week as we just want to catch up on the world of NASCAR and motorsports during the off week, the Olympic break, if you will, with the NASCAR Cup Series off this week and next. But still plenty to talk about of what's going on. We'll look back at the was in Indianapolis. We'll also look ahead to the rest of the run to the NASCAR playoffs, go over the standings. Got some news and notes to get to. We've got a mailbag coming up in just a bit. Dominic, always a pleasure, my friend. How we doing?
Oh, doing great, man. Good to see you. Back from our little off week. We were all traveling a little bit around the country, but it's nice to be settled back into the podcast studio.
No doubt. No question about it. Dom, let's jump right in and look back at what happened there at Indianapolis. And first off, let me just say, I was so thrilled that the NASCAR Cup Series returned to the Oval. We saw a very exciting race. And, that was the big question mark, was how these Cup cars would do on the Oval, as the previous car really struggled with it. But for the most part, I thought we saw a very entertaining race. Kyle Larson gets it done. He, had that, speeding penalty that cost him in the Indy 500. Could have won that day. And then just a few months later, redemption for Kyle Larson, even with the orange Hendrick car and everything, similar to what he ran there at Indianapolis and what Justin Allgaier got to run in the Coke 600. How cool was that for Kyle Larson to come back to Indy and get that win? I was super excited for Kyle there.
Certainly like a storybook ending, right, Tyler? Or like a movie ending where he didn't get the chance to run the Coke 600, has to sit the race out. The whole drama of, is he going to get the waiver? Is he not going to get the waiver? To returning back to Indianapolis, running that paint scheme, and having that full circle moment. And I think even in that victory lane or on the front stretch interview, it was that he had said that he was going to be back in 2025 to run the Indianapolis 500 again. So really cool way to continue that story and that saga to keep going. But win 27, he's the first driver this year to get to 4 wins. And even in that in itself too, Tyler, I think deserves a second look, because in this playoff format era where you have the 11th year now where we're going to have drivers get eliminated and drop off as we go through the playoffs, in the last 7 years, Tyler, the first driver to 4 victories has gone on to the championship 4 and has won the championship 3 times. Kyle Larson is included in that when he won 10 races in 2021. So if history repeats itself, which it has certainly done over the last few years, Kyle Larson is in good shape. But can that historical trend continue where he will advance to the championship 4? We're going to have to wait to find out, but he's having one heck of a year.
Yeah, 4 wins. He's leading the Cup points despite not running in the Coca-Cola 600. And the guy's a threat pretty much every week. I know that we have multiple drivers with 3 wins, and that we've seen some parity throughout the year this year with how many different winners now? Was it 10, 11, something like that?
We have 12 different winners, yes.
12 different winners. Even with that said, Kyle Larson is still, without question, the favorite here. I would be shocked if he's not in that championship 4 when it's all said and done, because not only is he on track to win the regular season title and all that, but with the wins and with the playoff points bonus that he's about to get and everything, even if he struggles and runs with some bumps along the way, he's going to have a lot more padding, if you will, compared to some of the other guys when it comes to playoff time.
Well, barring any penalties or any weird things that can happen over the next 4 weeks, the team's already locked up 28 playoff points, and that's across the 4 wins, the 8 stage victories across the year and all the different racetracks. He's got the most of the entire competition. The next one is Christopher Bell at 24 stage points, but he's 8th in points. And Tyler, that's important to note too, because with 4 races left and this tight battle we have for the regular season championship, you get those additional playoff points. You get 15 points that can carry over into each round if you win the regular season championship. We saw that last year. Martin Truex Jr. struggled in those opening rounds of the playoffs, but those 15 stage points, or the 15 playoff points rather, made a huge difference in him being able to advance to the round of 8 as a championship contender still.
Yeah, maybe so. With that said, I think one thing that we would be remiss of not mentioning when it comes to Kyle Larson right now, Dom, he's running well, of course, but Cliff Daniels has done an incredible job. That team, that pit crew, we know about Hendrick horsepower and everything with that, what what Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon have done. Kyle's the face of it, but this is a very strong team as a whole. And that's one conversation I've had with Jeff Gordon in the past when I mentioned Kyle Larson to him, like, man, Kyle's running good. And he's like, he would correct me respectfully, say, yeah, Kyle's running good, but this team is strong. And I think that's an important thing here.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that motorsports is a team sport. This is Hendrick Motorsports, a team that had two of their drivers not even make the playoffs last year. And that's not even going to be an issue this year, Tyler, based on how many drivers have won, who's on what, and where they are in points. All four Hendrick cars are going to be making the playoffs. And you got to imagine all four of those teams are very much capable of advancing through the rounds, plugging away those stage points and victories when they count. We've seen all four of these guys step up to the occasion. There's no reason to think, Kyle Larson included, of course, you got to have that big team behind you. Seems like Hendrick Motorsports has got a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah, I think so. I think Hendrick looks very strong. Joe Gibbs Racing has been very strong. Dominic, let's take a look now at the NASCAR playoff picture, if you will, and kind of break this down piece by piece as I pull up the standings in real time, ladies and gentlemen. Here is where we're at right now. Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Christopher Bell, Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric. They all have wins. They are in. Let's start with the guys that are in at this point. I think Larson, Elliott, Reddick, Hamlin, Blaney, and Byron, and Bell, those eight are kind of the tier one, if you will. And then everyone else behind him, those next group of winners, have a bit of catching up to do, if you will.
Certainly, certainly. And you look at the four drivers that are in the playoffs right now that don't have a victory, but they could, in theory, be bumped, or they're not locked in. They're not safe. Martin Truex Jr., Tyler, he's sitting there with a 112-point cushion over the cut line. In theory, he could lock in over the next couple of races because the maximum amount of points you can make up is 59 points per race. If he's above that 118 mark after the Bristol race, or not Bristol race, it'd be race number 24. So a couple of weekends from now, we can probably say with certainty that Martin Truex Jr., last year's regular season points winner, will be in the playoffs. But it gets really interesting after that because you have Richmond, Michigan, Daytona, and Darlington. Those are your last four races of the regular season. Ty Gibbs, who started the year out like a ball of fire, and I believe he even led the points or was second in points at one point. He's sitting 14th on the grid with a 46-point cut line, above the cut line. Chris Buescher, a three-time winner last year, 21 points ahead. And Ross Chastain, who won two races last year, is sitting with just 7 points over Bubba Wallace, who did make that incredible run to the round of 8 last year. He's 7 points back. Chase Briscoe, who we have seen make deep playoff runs in the past as well, sitting there 83 points back, 18th. And certainly, we didn't see this one coming, Tyler. I think you even had him in your championship 4 last year. He was the points leader leaving Atlanta this year. Kyle Busch, 19th, but 112 points back. It will take a win for him to make the playoffs.
So with that said, kind of looking on the outside of the fight to get in at this point, Dom, I would think, Bubba's the only one that's really within striking distance points wise. He's 7 back of Ross Chastain, and we've seen the 23-11 team run fairly well. He's in the top 15. He's actually 14th in actual points at this point in time. He's ahead of playoff drivers Joey Logano, Daniel Suarez, and Austin Cindric. Bubba could potentially get in on points. Everyone else, Briscoe, Kyle Busch, Todd Gilliland, Michael McDowell, all the others from there, it's going to take a win at this point. If you're Martin Truex and Ty Gibbs, I think you can pretty confidently say you're going to be in the playoff at this point. But Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, they're going to need to continue to run consistent throughout these next few weeks.
Certainly, and we haven't really seen that out of those guys. Guys that we saw running up front a lot last year. Seems like Trackhouse racing maybe isn't where it was a year ago. We can call it what it is here, Tyler. And RFK Racing, yes, Keselowski got the win, but now Chris Buescher's on the outside looking in. So certainly some things going on there. And we're going to Richmond, where Chris Buescher did win last year. He is the defending race winner of this race. That could play into that. You got to think some past experience is going to help. And RFK has that short track package figured out, if you will. Kyle Busch doesn't. Kyle Busch and RCR have not run well at those short tracks. Now, I do have to ask you this, Tyler, looking at this playoff grid, and maybe somebody we haven't even mentioned just yet, who is somebody taking Daytona out of it? Because we know Daytona is a crapshoot, but looking at Richmond, looking at Michigan, looking at Darlington, who are some drivers that aren't in the playoffs right now, or maybe that don't have that victory yet that could score a win at any of those tracks?
I think you have to start with Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, and Martin Truex. Those seem like obvious ones. And Kyle Busch that can win on any given week. That they can find a way. In Truex's case, like he's running up front, he just hasn't gotten victory lane yet. He's if we come back from the Olympic break and he wins, nobody's going to be shocked by any stretch of the imagination if that happens. But you think about we got Watkins Glen coming up. Maybe that's a chance for Michael McDowell. We've seen Josh Berry run well at some short tracks. Noah Gragson has had some moments this year where he's run well too. This is far from over. I would bet money, Dom, that these 16 drivers that are in at the moment, there will be change in these next, 5 races to the playoff? Like somebody is going to fall out and somebody's going to get in. This is not going to be the final 16 that make it.
Certainly. And that's why we watch. That's why we tune in, because you really have no idea. Daytona being the big wild card and not necessarily the cutoff race like it has been in the past, but being so deep into the regular season. I got to imagine too, Tyler, and we've talked to different people over the years in the garage, people we've had on this show. Daytona, especially where it's at on the schedule now, really gives teams a lot of hope. Maybe your season hasn't gone well. Maybe you're on the outside looking in, or maybe you've won races and you know it's a wild card race. You can go in and pick up some more points and aid towards your playoff run. Daytona certainly is the opportunity to either give some more momentum or newfound momentum, or give that opportunity. I think we all as humans just want hope sometimes. And I think Daytona gives teams across the entire grid that hope that they might be needing, that extra push. You know what? Our season maybe hasn't been good, or maybe our season's been great, but we know Daytona circled. We have a chance.
One more I would say for you. If you had to pick one driver that is on the outside that you think is most likely to win, who would it be and why? For me, it's Kyle Busch. I think Kyle can win any given week, and it only takes one outing for that team to find that Chevy speed and for him to get back out there. And I think, too, he's a guy that if his back's against the wall, he's going to embrace that pressure at that moment and go out there and potentially make it happen. Kyle's the guy for me. Who is it for you?
Well, you can't argue against it. Just to add to that, too, how well he's run on the super speedways, especially since joining RCR, how well that team has actually been. We talked about how bad they've been on short tracks, but they seem to have something with their intermediate program figured out. Michigan would be an opportunity, I think, for Kyle Busch. But adding to that, I think another guy that has shown a lot of speed, too, speaking of those intermediates, maybe somebody we wouldn't even thought 2 years ago that would run so well. Michael McDowell is somebody I think that is on the outside looking in that could certainly knock off a win out of Michigan or Daytona.
Front rows had speed too.
They've had speed. They've won 3 poles this year in that 34 car. Michael McDowell's never sat on a pole before, and he's gone out and done it 3 times this year. So I feel like Michael McDowell and that 34 team, they have a lot to prove, and they've made the playoffs before. They know how to do it. They can get it done. He's been great as a road course ace, great on super speedways, and as of late, intermediate speed. So McDowell or Busch, I think, Tyler, on the outside looking in, wouldn't shock me if they make the playoff grid.
Yeah, I think so. Let's move on to some headlines. A shortened, abbreviated version of news and notes. What do we got going on, Dom?
So we'll do some quick hits here. We'll start with Corey LaJoie and Spire Motorsports. We know that Corey LaJoie will not be returning to Spire Motorsports in 2025, although it was once previously thought he would be a part of the long-term program there at Spire. So Rodney Childers to be determined at the time of the taping who he'll be working with in 2025. But you got to imagine whoever that replacement is, or Michael McDowell, he's going to make them a better driver. Also, Ryan Sparks, I believe, is out in that picture as well. So Spire Motorsports, Tyler, certainly moving on from some of the foundational pieces that they've had with this team over the years.
Yeah, this sounded like a situation where it wasn't Corey leaving on his own, but rather being forced out. There's some obvious upgrades going on at Spire Motorsports, bringing in Michael McDowell, bringing in Rodney Childress. And, you know, I don't think you bring in Rodney Childress for Corey LaJoie to be the driver. Like, no disrespect to Corey there, but like that's just the reality of it. That Rodney's too talented to have to settle for Corey LaJoie, and Corey, I know he's worked hard and, he's tried to chase these opportunities. We saw him fill in for Chase Elliott, but has never been able to get over that hump, if you will. And I don't think it would be a bad thing for Corey to go to the Xfinity Series potentially, go win, go compete for a championship down there, and potentially move back up again, kind of like what Cole Custer is doing this upcoming year. But Spire's going to have plenty of options. I'll be curious who they potentially snag that's out there, but I would think they're looking to make an upgrade here. Who are some of the potential names that come to mind for that ride?
I would think because of the situation with the charters and Stewart Haas Racing, Zane Smith has to be at the top of that list. Maybe Ryan Preece, maybe even somebody like a Sam Mayer or somebody in the Xfinity Series that we're not talking about right now. I think you have the potential to see, and I've heard too that Eric Jones would have that option picked up at Legacy Motor Club in 2025, but maybe Eric Jones makes the jump. I know things haven't been going as smoothly as they would have liked with that Toyota transition and his injury. So you got to imagine there's maybe a few names there. Let's say you, Tyler, those names come to the top of your list or someone else.
Yeah, I think so. Eric Jones is a fascinating one to me because I feel like that he's just run into bad luck, right? He was running, I thought, fairly well at Joe Gibbs. And then, they liked Christopher Bell more than they did him. And it's hard to argue they made the wrong decision because Christopher Bell's been great. Goes to Legacy, wins there. And then this transition from Chevy to Toyota just hasn't gone well. But when he's been in good equipment, he's run well. If Spire is putting their money where their mouth is, if I were them, I would do whatever it takes to go get Eric Jones right now. I think Eric Jones, if he's in good equipment, if he's set up well, he can win races.
Certainly. And I feel too, just touching on that, I feel like what we're seeing with Christopher Bell, who's not to say that could have been Eric Jones. I know it's a woulda, coulda, shoulda situation, but Eric Jones was showing good growth at Joe Gibbs Racing. I think we were about to see him break out.
Yeah. And like I said, it's hard to say they made the wrong decision because of the results that turned of it, but you have to still think what could have been. Eric Jones is younger than Christopher Bell, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So certainly a lot of moving pieces there with that, and talking about that too, and bringing up Legacy Motor Club too on the other news notes and headline here with Legacy Motor Club too. It's been a struggle. Jimmie Johnson and his limited schedule setting up all the pieces that they had. The team announced earlier this week at the time of the taping that Jason Burdett, along with other members of the number 84 team, have been let go from their roles at the team. Burdett, longtime crew chief at JR Motorsports, making that jump to the Cup Series. It's been disastrous. Let's call it what it is, Tyler. This is shades of Darrell Waltrip in his last season, running really bad. And we know there's a learning curve with this new car. And Johnson has shown some speed. Daytona, Dover, showed speed at Indianapolis, but the results are just not there.
Yeah, it's been a struggle, and a lot of people are going to point to Jimmie Johnson, obviously as the driver, but they've had some weird stuff go on there, and he's had mechanical failures. He's been involved in wrecks, whatever. That team just needs a reset, if you will. And it's been so disappointing because you looked at this past week in Indianapolis, for example. That should have been a golden opportunity where Jimmie should have been in a position to run well, and it just doesn't work out. So I don't think it's a bad idea to try to bring new bodies in and exit of that situation there. Jason Burdett, he's had some success in the past. I don't think that he's going to be in a tough spot. I think he'll land on his feet somewhere. But this is a decision that had to be made. I don't think they had a choice but to do this.
Certainly. And the results speak for themselves. 28th in the Daytona 500, 29th at Texas. He's the king of Texas, Tyler. He's the undisputed king at Texas Motor Speedway. And
it's not like Jimmie Johnson forgot how to drive here. I mean, you look at when he struggled at the end at Hendrick Motorsports, that was when Hendrick as a whole was down. And then he goes to IndyCar and he was running really good on ovals there. Finished third at Texas. I was at that race. Like Jimmie, sure, he's not the 7-time champion that he once was, but he hasn't been put in good positions to succeed in recent memory.
Certainly, certainly. So maybe we see this little reset button, and I feel like that's got to be hard too. It's like when a coach gets fired mid-year and you're just trying to scramble and see what works and doesn't work, but you might as well. It seems like the only way to go up from here is up.
Yeah, what's Darian Grubb doing? We're gonna get him back with Jimmie Johnson or something, like uh
Yes.
maybe they need somebody familiar, somebody that he's worked with in the past to get that thing going. I think Darian Grubb was the crew chief with SVG one at Chicago last
It
year. So
was that guy's like the great interim crew chief. He filled in for Chad Knaus when Jimmy won the 500 in 2006. So there's some good success there.
won a championship with Tony Stewart and then get fired after that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
uh we'll see. We'll see what turns up with that. Anything else we want to hit on there?
So that's all I've got here for you, Tyler. And let's turn it over for the mailbag segment.
Yes, our mailbag segment. You can submit questions to us each and every week by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Also on X and Facebook at Star Podcast. You can find us there. We'll do one question of the mailbag this week, and this comes from Steven. Steven wants to know, with the Olympics going on, guys, do you think NASCAR or any form of motorsports could ever be in the Olympics? If so, what would you come up with? Stephen, very good question there in the mailbag. And, it is surprising, Dom, that there isn't a motorsport of sorts in the Olympics, with motorsports in general being as global as it is, from F1 to IndyCar, NASCAR, MotoGP, and everything. There's nothing of the sorts. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. I would think that if you're the Olympic Committee, you would want to come up with something that kind of attracts drivers from all different disciplines. Like, I don't think they're going to be throwing out a NASCAR stock car out there, but I don't think you'd be throwing out like an F1 race car either. I
Mhm.
think you'd be trying to come up with something similar to what we saw with IROC or something like that. Maybe like a sports car or something that everybody knows how to drive. Like, I could see something like that where you could get those guys from all over. And NASCAR already on a break. I think IndyCar is on a break right now. F1, of course, their schedule is pretty spread out throughout the year. If they got everybody on the same page, got the right people involved, I think it'd be very doable.
Well, and Stephen, that was a great question. And you're to your point too, Tyler. The Olympics has held motorsports events, and coincidentally, 1900 at the World Fair in Paris, where the Olympics are being held this year. I don't know all the details on what exactly was run, but I do know that it was even looked at in 2028 as a possible addition, but ultimately the committee said no to it. But it sounded like there was a Formula One kind of aspect to it. But I would say, Tyler, motorsports got added. You could probably have a lot of fun at like a track and field day, like instead of a 100-yard dash, like a 10-yard dash, or call it the green white checker. Maybe you pull in different things like a NASCAR, Formula One, an IndyCar style of thing where there's different events, like a track and field type day, but something specific to those sports. I think you have a lot of fun with it.
I would guess that you'd probably need a road course facility, just because, like, you think about F1 drivers, they've never run on ovals before. But think about this too. When we talk location wise, so this year's Olympics in Paris, you got surfing events that are 1,000 miles away on Paris territory. With the LA Olympics, they're going to have softball and rowing events in Oklahoma City, which is not anywhere close to Los Angeles. Let's just say, you pick out a city, for example. Let's take the LA Olympics. If your idea in mind is, all right, where the hell are you going to put this thing? All right, the LA Olympics, I need to go find a road course. We can run Sonoma.
Mhm.
That could be very possible, and Sonoma could host all that, and you're still in the state of California and everything. Long Beach would be kind of tough just because of all the traffic of the Olympics already, of making that happen. But there's a number of facilities, like even worldwide, you go to all these different countries that have these different road courses and street courses and all that. Even let's say if Dallas had an Olympics, all right, then or Houston, whatever. Then if we need a road course, then we'll go down the road to Austin to Circuit of the Americas. Like there's plenty of places to make that work.
Yeah, and to like to that point too, with needing a road course facility, maybe even set it up, Tyler, like a Pinewood Derby type deal. Like, okay, here's the materials you have. You can build a car. You have X amount of time to build it. I don't know how that would all look, but I feel like again, you can get so creative with it, and like how you mentioned too, all these facilities we could use. I feel like the possibilities could be endless on having motorsports in the Olympics. Will it happen in our lifetimes again? Maybe. We'll see.
Well, and then another thing too, you'd ask, all right, who would get involved? I would think that every one of these top drivers across the world would want to say, I'm in. I want to do this. If they said motorsports is in the Olympics, and then their teams and organizations. We've seen Hendrick Motorsports now get involved with the 24 Hours of Le Mans and now the Indy 500. With that, we know Roger Penske with everything he's done with IndyCar, NASCAR, and other motorsports. Trackhouse now getting into MotoGP. The Andretti's, of course, with IndyCar, and they want to get into F1. They've looked into NASCAR and all that. I think you would get the best of the best. I think that you would get Kyle Larson representing the United States. You'd get Daniel Suarez representing Mexico. You go down the line, just or all these different F1 drivers. Max Verstappen, I think he's from Spain. You would get these countries would be able to pull their top talent for this.
Absolutely. Again, possibilities are endless. You have so many people rallying behind just that common cause of motorsports. Motorsports in the Olympics, Stephen. I like that idea.
Well, and one thing too, like these guys are so competitive at their core. I think Kyle Larson would embrace the opportunity and the challenge of, you think about this, okay? Just put it in perspective. All the time, NASCAR drivers get told, well, you're not F1. Well, you're not running those cars. IndyCar drivers get told all the time, well, you're not on the level of NASCAR. Like Joseph Newgarden is begging for the opportunity to run a NASCAR. And, Roger Penske's holding him back, whatever, and all that. Joseph Newgarden's a name that comes to mind. Like if he got the chance to go toe-to-toe with Verstappen, Kyle Larson, all those guys, he would love that. I think you would get all these countries bringing out their very best if you did this.
Certainly. It'd be like how IROC was back in the 90s and the 2000s. You had all these people with different motorsports disciplines and backgrounds all coming together for that love of competition and just wanting to know that you're the best of the best. The Olympics would be the great world stage for that.
Let me ask you this. Who comes to mind, not just NASCAR, but all disciplines? Who would be some drivers, maybe even some organizations that you think would potentially like to do something like this?
I feel like Formula One would be the spearhead behind it, and especially being on a global stage and F1 having the global reach that it does. I feel like as a default, if you will, Formula One would be the one, the organization taking the charge on it. But then you'd have drivers like Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. I think you'd have those top F1 guys really embracing the idea. And then you look at NASCAR, you look at Kyle Larson, William Byron, some of these guys that just they have to go out and compete all the time. Christopher Bell, Kyle Busch, those names come to mind. Like, right, it's like the Olympics when we're talking the USA, the Team USA basketball team, and all the NBA All-Stars that get to go and play these games, and they all come together for the love of just beating other countries and trying to be the best. I imagine that same sense of camaraderie would come over all of these guys. And you bring up a great point too, Tyler. Do you go with the organization that you're with? Do you drive for your country? Like there's just so many elements to how this would look. It would be so creative.
Yeah, well, and I think too, let's take NASCAR as an example. Rick Hendrick, Richard Childress, Roger Penske, those are some fine Americans, all right? They would love the idea of representing the stars and stripes, the red, white, and blue, to have the Chevy bow tie or the Ford blue oval, whatever it may be, representing on that stage. Like, I think they would be all in, even if they can't call themselves Hendrick Motorsports and we're Team USA, whatever. Like they would fully embrace it, I would think.
Absolutely. And friend of the show too, Jeff Bodine, and his involvement with the U.S. Olympic bobsled team. I can tell there's a lot of passion. You can rally behind and know that you're on that same team, that same common cause. You could just hear him when he was on our show talking about the Olympic bobsledding team and that passion that everybody had behind the project to help the U.S. team restore glory and be able to compete for gold. You get a lot of people fired up, and certainly you would have that in the NASCAR community.
I think so. Dom, before we go, what's going on with you?
Yeah, so be kind of just kicking it here in New Mexico here for a little bit and enjoying family time and some nice things that need to get done around the house. And shout out to my brother, Martin, friend of the show. He got engaged to his longtime girlfriend, Selena. So really happy about that. A lot of celebrations here as of late. How about you, Tyler?
Things have been good here. On top of my day job of covering the Seattle Seahawks for Chat Sports, now I'm covering the Kansas City Chiefs as well. So excited to finally get to embrace my favorite team, as you can see on the wall behind me up there. So that'll be great. Just got back from Phoenix working with the Native American Basketball Invitation. Had over 196 teams, 180 tribal nations represented. So that was great to be a part of and represent my tribe and community, everything. But now just enjoying some time in Dallas before things get busy with the NFL preseason and training camps and all that. About to make one last trip home before I say goodbye to the family for football season. About to go to Tulsa for a few days and take my mom to a Donny Osmond concert for her birthday. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, things are good here. So can't complain at all. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition of Let's Go Racing. Make sure to subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit the like button on YouTube. We certainly would appreciate it. Follow us on social media, at Tyler Jones Live, at Dominic Aragon, also at Star Podcast on X, Facebook, also email davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us there. For Dominic Aragon and our entire crew, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. See you next week.